Hey y'all, Fred here. Thanks so much for joining me today. As you may have noticed from the thumbnail image, today is cutting day, and this is a very special new beginning for us. So finally, after getting through a ton of real knives, let's call them, of real known quality and steel, we're now going to start testing some of our other knives that we have purchased and shown here on the channel, starting with the OK-81 from OK Knives. So if you haven't been with me for a while here or seen any of these cutting tests, I have my own redneck rating scale, which goes anywhere from 1 cuts like a spoon to 10 just looks at onions and they start crying. These are not particularly objective scientific tests. I'm not cutting the exact number of linear inches or feet of whatever. You know, I'm trying to get them close, and you'll see how we do it here in just a minute. But just in case you were here like thinking this is some very high-end professional testing outfit, you probably have ended up at the wrong channel. The rest of us, however, we are going to have a little bit of fun with this. These are for my own personal interest, but it's for a lot of y'all's personal interest too, because I know a lot of y'all also have been interested and or picked up this knife and maybe wondering yourselves, how does it compare to some of the other well-known steels? So we're going to figure that out here together. If you would, please, before I get too far down the road, hit that thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the notification bell. That certainly helps little guys like me on the YouTubes. I definitely appreciate that. I did do a full review of this knife on a previous video, maybe 1 or 2 videos about this thing. This thing cost me $62 at OK Knives. These are genuine carbon fiber contoured scales. They do have these on sale from time to time. Sometimes they're marked up to like $75 and sometimes down to $60. So you just have to watch out for that and get one when it's on a good deal. However, they do still have these available. This is listed as an M390 steel. You can see that right there on the blade tang. Most people have said, oh, that's not probably real M390. However, I've done a good bit of research, and there's a lot of people on the Reddit channels, and those guys are pretty brutal over there, who have actually XRF tested these and said, yeah, that actually is M390 steel. Now, what we don't know is how the heat treat was, how hard it really is. At least the composition of the steel matches M390. You know, in my book, that's a pretty darn good start, especially for the price of these knives. I have no idea what the HRC rating. If I had to guess, I'm going to say probably in the range of 58 to 61. But man, it could be even lower than that. We just don't know, and that's exactly why we are doing these testing. If you haven't already figured that out, this is pretty much a very nearly identical replica of a PM2 by Spyderco. There are actually some noticeable and rather significant differences from a PM2. There's different things, including that the handle shape and style is a little bit different from a PM2. Obviously, there's some different contouring cuts here that are made as well. This is an actual contoured carbon fiber scale. So, the best of my knowledge, there are no contoured real PM2s, and nor are there any in carbon fiber. Now, I could be totally wrong. Maybe there's some, sprint runs or special ones out there. I'm just not aware of them. Feel free to drop that down in the comments if you like, but that makes a pretty significant difference as well. But there are actually, if you put these handles side by side, and I did that in my original review video, you'll see there are actually some different shapes to these handles than the other ones. This is what I would call a full-size knife. It comes in at 8 1/4 inches long. This is about as long as I would want to carry, although I'm very happy to carry this one and have done so quite a bit as my everyday carry knife. At only, it's under 4 ounces, 3.82 ounces. It's very lightweight and easy to carry. I love the carbon fiber, the contoured scales on these things. That suits me just fine. It's got a 3.12, about 3 1/8 cutting length of the blade, the actual cutting length. The blade stock's about 150 thousandths, so a little bit on the thicker side, but you can see it tapers down very thin as it goes out towards that needle-like tip, which is, very consistent with the PM2 and one of the reasons why this is so popular. I did measure this at about 17 thousandths behind the edge. However, I have sharpened this knife. So I did a sharpening video just recently on the channel. You can find that on the OK-223, which uses the same M390 steel. And as far as I can tell, it's probably the exact same blade stock. They just simply cut it and grind it down to a different size and shape. And so I did a whole full video on sharpening sharpening this on the old Worksharp Pro system. And then as soon as I finished sharpening that, I didn't do it on video, but I did mention this at the end of that video. I sharpened this one as well because I wanted to see, was the blade steel the same? Did it feel the same on the sharpening system between these two knives? I have to say this one felt a little bit harder, but that's such a subjective thing that I could be totally wrong about that. So don't take that as any kind of gospel or indication. It was an extremely subtle difference, so much as to be very much within the margin of error, and these could have felt exactly the same. They both did feel, however, like an M390 steel you would expect to feel, being a little bit harder, taking a little bit more work on the stones to grind that away, especially since I reprofiled these blades down. So I didn't actually measure where this one started. I did measure the OK-223. We'll do a separate video, obviously, on this one. And this was a horrible factory grind. I measured this in spots up to 34 degrees on one side of the knife, and it ranged from like 24 to 34 degrees on the same side of the knife. So they were like doing this as they were grinding it on the belt. That's all I can imagine. This one wasn't nearly as bad, although it was still at least 24, 26, maybe even higher in some places. I reprofiled this down to an 18 degree, which has made this thing incredibly slicey, which is the reason why we want to do it. Let's do a little quick size comparison. Again, I have a whole review video, so I won't do a full in-depth review, but you can see this is a pretty full-size knife. Most everybody knows what the PM2 is. This is obviously the 𝗀𝗏𝗧𝗏 and the regular bug out. I could compare it to another PM2. You want to see what it looks like next to a PM2? Ooh, very different, huh? Again, nearly identical. It doesn't have this second hump. That was one of the handle shape differences. Has been removed off of that. Para 3 feels kind of silly to compare these. I just showed you one a minute ago. There you go. Probably everybody has a Civivi Vision or has at least seen them and understands approximately what the size is, or the regular Pyrite Light. You can see, again, pretty full-size knife compared to most of these options out there. All right, what other details can I tell you? Obviously, a compression lock. If you haven't seen, again, the videos, understand and know that you have to make this cutout yourself. These scales come solid all the way across here. So you have to take a Dremel and cut that away in order to get access to that compression lock. However, the action on this is phenomenal. I did put skiffs on it just to make it even better, but even before the skiffs, this thing was rock solid. It's a little bouncy, but that's me not getting off the lock bar, or the compression lock, either too early or too late. It's been a while. I'm out of touch, but the action on this thing is beautiful. Those skiff bearings are awesome. It locks up. As compared to the 223, which I've had so many problems with, this thing is absolutely as solid as it comes. In terms of action, fit, finish, ergonomics are good. I mean, the PM2 is one of the most popular knives for a reason. You've got this big forward finger choil with excellent jimping on both the finger and the thumb, so you can choke up and really get into detail cuts. Still works great in pinch grips or draw cuts. You can choke back here if you want to get pokey, stabby, and feel very confident. I have a size large glove, so beautifully done all the way around. Does have this interesting carbon fiber clip, which actually has worked really well. It may potentially be a bit of a sharp edge, but the good thing about carbon fiber is I can take a little piece of sandpaper in about 2 minutes and knock down the edge of that. These edges are also nicely rounded off. I don't want to say they're rounded off. They're not sharp at all. Okay, they're not really chamfered much, but it feels like somebody's already taken sandpaper and knocked down all the edges. There are no sharp edges anywhere on this. I do wonder when it gets time to do some harder cutting into the wood, how much all of these things are going to start stabbing and poking, but that's why we do these tests. Otherwise, fantastic in terms of ergonomics all the way around. We're going to figure out what that is. But again, the PM2 is the most popular knife for a reason. So I definitely can recommend it. And again, after I put this 18-degree edge on this thing, I mean, this is just a laser beam all day long. Both this one and the PM3, the Para 3 version, the OK-223, came out really well after putting an edge. Makes this knife very good. So we're starting at a 10 of 10. It's the highest rating we can get on the Redneck Sharpness Scale. Let's go over to the cutting table and start some cutting. Okay, so we got 3 pieces of cardboard here, 412 total square inches. You will note that there are 2 different colors of cardboard. That's going to be relevant in just a minute. I'm going to start with a small piece, and you can see right off the bat this 18-degree bevel that I put on this knife just cuts right through this cardboard, no problem at all. Hot knife through butter is a great description for how this thing is cutting so far. So this is where it becomes interesting. So this monitor stand, it's got a lot of tape on it. We're going to see that residue in just a minute. This is a very thick piece of cardboard. I've cut this on some other tests as well. This is noticeably heavier and thicker. It's the same single ply, but the paper that they use in it is much thicker cardboard stock. So I thought this was going to be a lot more difficult. Some other knives have had more difficulty with this cardboard than this one, but you can see this cuts pretty cleanly, quick and easy right through it. There are, when you get it at certain angles, it wants to tear a little more than cut, but that is not a function of the knife. This knife is just slicing right through that, no problem at all. Now we're into the softer, I think this is a Walmart box, and back to just beautifully slicey, no issues at all. Nice and smooth through the cardboard. So I think this is a factor of having that 18-degree edge. I don't think the original factory edge it came with would have been able to do it this well. The question really is it real M390? How does it hold up compared to what an M390 steel would be? How much are we dulling this blade right now with this cardboard? We've seen this test do some pretty significant damage to many of the other real knife steels. So let's take a look. Grab a piece of paper here, and we are going to cut through it. There is a little residue on here. Interestingly, cutting through all that cardboard warmed up the blade. The blade literally got warmer from the speed of cutting through all those pieces of cardboard. I thought that was interesting. This KPL knife shield is fantastic for getting tape residue. Also has the added benefit of protecting your knife. So let's see how we do here. Looks pretty clean on that first cut, but you'll see what I'm finding now is towards the tip of the blade there is a micro nick in that blade. You can barely even feel it with your fingernail, but you can see I can kind of pinpoint it. Otherwise, it's very sharp everywhere else. But, you know, when you have any nicks in the blade at all, that's a no-no on the old redneck knife sharpness scale. I'm trying to get another piece of paper just to see, is it just that one spot? How's the tip or the heel of the blade otherwise beyond that one spot? So I'm going to have to give this one a 7 because there is a nick in the blade. The rest of it actually is still pretty sharp, as we'll see as we move forward here. I'm hoping that with this rubber hose I'll be able to just cut cleanly through it without having to saw. That's a good indication of how sharp a knife is. Of course, you know, the geometry and all those other factors as well. You can see it push cuts pretty easily through this reinforced rubber hose. I'm pretty happy about that. Now I'm just seeing how quickly and easily it can pop through that rubber. Again, another indication of how good of an angle and edge is on that blade here. I am feeling a little bit where that cutout is for that compression lock. I do feel that corner digging into my hand a little bit. So let's see where we're now. So now it's pretty clean. It seems to be able to cut past that nick in the blade that we had before. So now I'm just confused. I see this a lot, though, in the test. It's not uncommon. So I'm going to have to rank this one somewhere between a 7 or 8. All right, so let's move on to the rope cutting portion of our event. And what I'm looking for and really hoping in this blade is that you can pop down through that without having to do a lot of sawing. If you've seen a lot of these tests, I've had to saw back and forth with a lot of those knives, so I'm really hoping here that I can just push down basically and let the sharpness of the blade do the work, and you'll see this is doing an excellent job. This is probably one of the best so far at being able to just literally push down and pop through this sisal rope. Very happy with the way it performed in this test. Let's see if it did any damage to the edge. So we're back to real speed here, and you can see now it's passing almost cleanly through there. And I know that nick is still towards the edge of the blade. Now it's just me. I shouldn't be cutting this same side of the piece of paper, but it's going through pretty cleanly. So a little confusing. We see this in a lot of tests where it'll look nicked up after one test and then it seems to bounce back after another. I'm going to still give it a 7+ here. The rest of the blade is easily still an 8 in terms of sharpness, but it does have that one little nick. So let's try our ergonomic test. I'm going to start by holding it in the kind of normal pinch grip with your hands, thumb against that jimping. It does bite into this wood really well, so I'm very happy about that. It feels good in the hand for the most part. I'm going to switch to a hammer grip here, just trying different grips. I'll rotate the wood around. Some of this wood is harder on one half than the other, and it doesn't matter which side I'm cutting on. It's actually biting really well into that wood. So very happy as far as the edge and the bite of that blade is concerned. Ergonomically, I'm definitely feeling that compression lock cutout in the palm of my hand there. I've got just some sharp corners, I guess, where I had to cut that away to get access to it. So that's something I'm definitely feeling. I think I need some sandpaper. The pocket clip is great in the hand. No issues at all from that. It's really just this compression lock cutaway, little sanding, and that should be good. But very happy with how it performed in the wood test there. Let's take a look and see, did it actually dull the edge any more than it was? Feels good. Nothing that I can feel immediately, and you can see right there, still got that little bit of a nick in the blade that that has come back again. So it's just, I guess, dependent on how I'm cutting the paper. It's been there since we cut the cardboard. If I go fast, I can go kind of past it, which is exactly what the 7 on the rating scale is for. You got one little nick somewhere. If you cut fast enough, you can get through the paper and not even really notice it. So this is definitely a 7. The rest of the blade, apart from that nick, is an 8. So I'm somewhere between a 7 and an 8. There you go. So very happy with that. You know, is it real M390? It feels like it. It definitely certainly held the edge much better than I kind of expected, certainly better than a lot of other knives did. Let's see how well it strops back here. I think other than the 4 or 5 strokes per side that I started with, I'm doing about a dozen strokes on each side. Now I'm on the smooth side of the strop. You can see that little dark patch there. That's actually steel from the last few knives that I have stropped. So I'm hoping that this strops back as nicely as it has performed so far. Let's take a look and see, because this could be a real winner. Definitely one of the better performing knives. And look at that, clean through the paper. I'm actually excited about that. This thing is back to a 10. I mean, that was me, a little cutter error on the paper there, but this is a very slicey knife once again. At least a 9, if not a 10. I'm giving it a 10. So very easy to strop back. Let's take a look at how we did overall in the test results. All right, I apologize for the tiny writing on the screen. I'm probably going to have to find a better way to put this on the screen, but I will try to read through this and make it as understandable as I can. Obviously, we think this is an M390. A lot of these have been XRF tested and proven to be an M390. The question was the HRC rating, how hard, what was the heat treat like. If it was a good one at a good heat treat, then you would expect, according to Knife Steel Nerds, about a 6.5 on their edge retention scale. I did sharpen this knife first down to an 18 degree. I think that made a huge difference. That made it a 10 out of a 10. Certainly starting out right out of the gate, we did about 412 square inches of cardboard, which dropped it to a 7 or an 8. It has to be a 7 because there was a nick in the middle of the blade. We clearly saw that, but the rest of the knife did not lose much sharpness at all. We did our 3 hose cuts, still 7 or 8 on the scale. We did 11 rope cuts. It popped cleanly. Probably, I'm going to say this is the best rope cutting knife so far. That has always been the difficult part of the test, that so many knives, even of known steel quality, have had really a lot of struggles with, and it popped right through those rope cuts very nicely. Again, 7 to 8 after the rope cutting, and 7 or 8 still on my rating scale after cutting the wood. Ergonomically, it felt really good through the wood there. I will say, as I mentioned, the cutout of the compression lock bar access there is a little bit pokey. I'm going to have to take a little bit of a sandpaper to that. No problem. It's carbon fiber, just a literal piece of sandpaper. Work that edge a little bit. I think that will make it just about perfect. Overall, this was an excellent performance. It stropped back to a 10 of 10 on the sharpness scale.
really good performer. A little surprising. I'm not sure if I should be surprised or not. I kind of knew and believed that it was an M390 going in, so I was expecting to have a good edge that would hold up better than most other knives have, and that is kind of what I experienced. Other than that one little nick in the blade, again, the rest of that blade never got more dull than, I would say, an 8 on the scale. So that held up really well, other than that one little nick. Some of the best rope cutting performance probably of all the tests that I've done so far. Very nice bitey edge. What else can I say about it? The ergonomically, it was good. The contoured carbon fiber scales, that pocket clip that I was wondering about, didn't feel anything with that at all. Stropped back beautifully. It was actually very easy to strop back. Probably one of the best cutting knives overall. I'm going to say, in my experience, from both having now sharpened it and cut with it, it probably is an M390. It's not going to be, sharpened to a 60 or 62. I'm going to guess maybe somewhere in a 58, 59 range. It's a very subjective thing, but, I've used a few knives, so I think that's probably where this thing is. Reprofiling it down to an 18 degree made all the difference in the world on how easy it was. Just cutting like butter through the cardboard, even the tougher cardboard, popped through the rope and the rubber hose. That sharpening made a huge difference on the performance of this knife. So overall, as far as overall test rating goes, I'm giving this an 8 or a 9. This is definitely one of the best performers, right up there certainly with the 𝗀𝘂𝘁 𝗧𝗲𝗍, which until this was my best performer yet, ironically, in an HCR13. But 𝗀𝘂𝘁 does a great job with their knives. That was a real deal, 𝗀𝘂𝘁. So fantastic. This is definitely in the top 2 knives as far as test results go so far in this my redneck cutting test. So very interesting. I'm going to test actually the OK-223 next, because it's supposed to have the exact same blade, and if it performs equally as well, then we'll know, yeah, there's a little consistency. These are pretty good blades, and it will also help really reinforce that this is a real M390 steel. So very happy with this knife. Definitely has improved my thinking about this in general. I loved it before. I love it even more now. Very happy with how that all worked out. I'd love to hear any feedback you guys have, any suggestions. Please, if you would, go down below and hit that subscribe notification bell if you're not subscribed already. Throw me a thumbs up if you think I did okay, thumbs down. Either way, let me know in the comments if you guys would like to see me do something differently. I'm trying to speed up through the cutting test here, so let me know what you would like to see differently. If that's the case, we'll try to keep getting better on these. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys. As always, look forward to chatting with you. I'll see you soon. Take care.